We're joined by military expert Vladyslav Seleznev. We'll ask him for all the details. Vladislav, good morning and glory to Ukraine. Hello.
Diana, greetings to you as well. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. Vladislav, speaking of, I noticed the General Staff's report on losses. We've gotten used to seeing quite a large number of Russian vehicle losses. We see that now. It's decreased a bit, and the number of attacks has also gone down. Overall, at the front, as we can see, there are still plenty of attacks and positional battles going on, but nevertheless, in certain directions, there is always some activity from the occupiers. How would you assess what's happening right now, directly on the line of contact?
Everything in this world is limited and finite. I truly believe that the vast Russian reserves and strategic resources also have a clear tendency to eventually run out. The fact that the enemy's losses in vehicles have decreased to some extent indicates that fewer armored vehicles and special equipment are appearing in the so-called kill zone, as well as in the near-rear area, which is currently suffering the most and taking significant losses from mid-range strikes carried out by the brave armed forces of the Ukrainian army. Yes, of course. It would be completely unfair to say that there is any kind of lull on the battlefield right here and now. The dynamics of the fighting, as well as the losses in personnel for the Russian army, indicate that the battles are ongoing. Not only in the Pokrovsk direction, but in several other directions as well. The enemy is trying to use its numerical and logistical advantage to achieve certain territorial gains and results that are favorable for them. But it's not working. It's not working. And in general, this hopelessness for the enemy is based, in my opinion, on three key factors. The first factor is the resilience of well-trained and fully equipped Ukrainian soldiers who are carrying out their missions directly on the battlefield. The next factor is those very engineering and technical structures, skillfully built and properly equipped, that allow us to slow down the advance of the Russian army as much as possible, and in many areas, to stop the enemy's advance altogether. And the third factor is the drone factory. It would be fair to say that, at present, drones are creating what's called a kill zone directly at a distance of 10, 15, even 20 kilometers from the line of contact. And to say that our drones provide us with the capability to destroy the enemy on a massive scale, and currently are at the absolute forefront in terms of the number and quantity of enemy losses, would also be an entirely accurate and fair assessment. And we need to clearly understand the following. Our drones operate at great depths, delivering strikes with almost surgical precision against enemy equipment and enemy personnel. And the only factor, in my opinion, that we should pay attention to right now is not to fool ourselves with illusions. The drone component is quite specific and only performs a number of tasks necessary for scaling up and destroying enemy forces and assets. In a situation like this one, we shouldn't completely underestimate the role of artillery, because the power of artillery shells is significantly and substantially greater than that of drones, even the most powerful ones available today. Accordingly, we need to remember a key point that almost all leading military experts talk about. Only a comprehensive combination of different types of firepower allows us to achieve technological success on the battlefield. We shouldn't bet on any kind of wonder weapon, that is, a miracle weapon for victory, in this context, because every weapon has its own specific purpose.
Let's also discuss the successes of the armed forces of Ukraine, for example, in the south of the country. Ukrainian drones struck the Kuban Crimea power bridge, 10 power hubs, and 5 air defense systems in temporarily occupied Crimea on July 12th through 13th. This was reported by the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Madyar Brobdy. Over the course of 2 days, in the peninsula and other occupied territories of Ukraine, the armed forces of Ukraine attacked 11 power hubs of various capacities, 9 electrical substations, a strategic electricity transfer point of the power bridge from Russia to Crimea, and the gas station. Also destroyed were an S-400 Triumph launcher, Tor and Pantsir S-1 air defense missile systems, and 2 Nebo-U radar systems. And how do such strikes, particularly the blackout of temporarily occupied territories, affect the occupying army? Here, we're talking about Crimea as well. How does this affect, let's say, the already poor ability of the Russian army to fight effectively? And what additional problems does it create?
I'm from Crimea myself, so I had the opportunity to communicate with residents of the temporarily occupied Crimean Peninsula and get firsthand information from them about what's happening there. Accordingly, the problems that are currently being caused by systematic strikes from Ukrainian defense forces, primarily drone attacks, are targeting energy facilities in Crimea. And it's not just about energy facilities. We're also talking about key transportation hubs and highways. We're talking about military sites as well as military infrastructure facilities. And we're also talking about oil refining and oil storage facilities, systems located on the territory of the temporarily occupied Crimean Peninsula. In short, it's a disaster. A disaster not only for the local residents who don't have free access to fuel, but where you can buy it, the prices are just astronomical. Just last week, while talking to residents of Crimea, I heard an unbelievable number from them: 300 rubles per liter of regular 95 octane gasoline. Now, more and more often, I'm hearing numbers like 400, 450 rubles. So, the stagnation in terms of being able to buy fuel at reasonable prices, fuel that's needed both for running a business and for handling, some personal needs for people in Crimea, is getting worse and worse. The Russian occupiers are finding themselves in a very similar predicament. They're getting consistently and steadily decreasing amounts of energy resources, including electricity, because blackouts in Crimea have essentially turned into a regular daily occurrence and a long term reality. There's a lot of damage to energy infrastructure across Crimea. Yes, local repair crews are trying to restore these facilities, but once again, at night, Ukrainian drones come in and continue their destructive work, aimed at dispelling the Russian occupiers' illusions that Crimea is a safe territory for them. Basically, the ground in Crimea will keep burning under their feet, I believe, until the very last Russian soldier leaves the temporarily occupied Crimean Peninsula. Moreover, Mr. Brody is making it absolutely clear which direction the Russian occupiers should take. The infrastructure of the Kerch Bridge is still intact for now. And actually, Major Brody clearly, in his interviews, points out that if Russians want to stay alive, they should get out beyond the borders of the Crimean Peninsula. And basically, the most reasonable part of the so-called Gauleiter Corps among the occupiers is already starting to listen to his recommendations. But at least my sources confirm the fact that the families of the security forces are already starting to leave the Crimean Peninsula. They say this in the context that supposedly it's a temporary, forced measure, that after a little while they'll come back. But is there anything more permanent in this life than something temporary?
Yeah, and by the way, they're already reporting that these fuel shortages have affected the air defense capabilities in Crimea. Aids in particular is talking about this. So, as they say, this is just the beginning. Unfortunately, there are never any quick or effective results, so we're keeping an eye on the situation. Vladislav, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. Let me remind you, Vladislav Seleznev, military expert, joined our broadcast.